The massive chamber stretched for miles in every direction, its crystal walls pulsing with soft blue light. Hundreds of beings from across the galaxy gathered in floating pods, their forms as different as the stars themselves. Some looked like walking trees made of metal. Others were just balls of pure energy that flickered and danced in the air. A few resembled giant insects with too many eyes and legs that clicked against their transport pods. This was the Grand Council of the Galactic Hegemony, the ruling body that had controlled most of the known galaxy for over 10,000 years. Today, like every month for the past century, they met to discuss the same boring topics: trade routes, mining rights, and the endless task of watching primitive species that might one day become problems. Admiral Zixtal stepped forward from his pod. He was Krex, a species that looked like 7-foot-tall lizards covered in black scales and wearing military uniforms that gleamed with medals. The Krex had been the military arm of the hegemony for thousands of years. They were proud, disciplined, and absolutely certain that no species in the galaxy could match their power. "Honored council members," Zixtal began, his voice carrying easily through the chamber's translation systems. "I present this month's Primitive Species Surveillance Report." A holographic display flickered to life above the center of the chamber. It showed a three-dimensional map of a spiral arm galaxy, with thousands of yellow dots marking star systems. Most of the dots were green, meaning they were either empty or contained species that posed no threat. A few were red, marking systems that needed immediate attention, but the vast majority were yellow, species that were being watched but considered harmless. "We continue to monitor 47 developing civilizations," Zixtal continued. "Most show the expected patterns: slow technological development, internal conflicts, and the usual primitive behaviors we have documented for millennia." The Admiral's clawed finger pointed to a small blue dot near the edge of the display. "System designation Sol 3. Local species designation Human. Current threat assessment remains at the lowest possible level." A ripple of what might have been laughter passed through the chamber, though with so many different species present. It sounded more like a collection of strange noises: clicks, whistles, electronic buzzes, and sounds that had no name mixed together. Counselor Vexara of the Zephyrians floated closer to examine the data. The Zephyrians were ancient, their crystal, bodies containing minds that had lived for thousands of years. They were telepathic, able to read thoughts and share knowledge instantly among themselves. If anyone should have detected something unusual about the humans, it would be them. "These creatures are still using chemical rockets for space travel," Vexara noted, her mental voice translating into speech for the non-telepathic species. "Their fastest ships take months to travel between planets in their own system. They have not even achieved basic energy manipulation or gravity control." "Indeed," Zixtal agreed. "Our monitoring stations report that they have only recently established permanent bases on their system's fourth planet and a few of their natural satellites. Their technology appears to be advancing at the standard rate for carbon-based species. Current projections suggest they will not achieve faster-than-light travel for at least another 50 standard years." High Coordinator Thexmol of the Vorthak Collective pulsed a brilliant orange color. The Vorthak were pure energy beings who had transcended physical form eons ago. They were considered the wisest members of the Council, though their communication through color changes was often difficult for other species to interpret. "What of their military capabilities?" Thexmol asked, his colors shifting to inquiring blue-green patterns. Zixtal's scaled lips pulled back in what passed for a smile among his species. "Laughably primitive. They still use kinetic projectiles and chemical explosives for warfare. Their largest weapons are fusion devices that would barely scratch the hull of one of our scout ships. They fight among themselves constantly over resources and territory, showing the typical lack of unity we expect from pre-contact species." The Admiral gestured, and the holographic display zoomed in on Earth itself. The blue and green planet rotated slowly, showing the familiar continents and oceans that the monitoring stations had been observing for decades. Their population is approaching 8 billion individuals, spread across multiple nation-states that frequently engage in conflicts with each other. They show no signs of the technological or social unity that would be required for them to pose any threat to hegemony interests. Counselor Mordak of the Silicate Assembly, a being that looked like a walking boulder with glowing cracks running through its surface, spoke with a voice like grinding stone. "Have they detected our monitoring stations?" "Negative," Zixtal replied confidently. "Our stealth technology is based on principles these primitives will not discover for centuries, if ever. The monitoring stations remain completely invisible to their detection methods. They register as natural asteroids on their crude scanning equipment." What the Admiral did not know was that at that very moment, hidden deep beneath the surface of Earth's moon, human technicians were carefully monitoring the Council's transmission. The alien meeting was being recorded, analyzed, and dissected by some of the most brilliant minds humanity had ever produced. The monitoring stations the aliens thought were undetectable had been discovered 50 years ago. Since then, they had been carefully modified to send exactly the information the aliens expected to see, while the real human activities remained completely hidden. Back in the council chamber, the discussion continued. Species after species reported, on their assigned sectors, each one confirming the same pattern. The galaxy remained stable under hegemony control. Primitive species were developing as expected. Advanced species remained content under the protection and guidance of the Council. "What of the recent disturbances in the Andorian sector?" asked Councillor Yelthin of the Aquatic Confederation, her translator struggling with the bubbling, liquid sounds of her native language. "Minor rebellions," Zixtal dismissed with a wave of his clawed hand. 3 systems attempted to resist hegemony trade regulations. Standard pacification protocols were implemented, the rebellions were crushed within days, and the survivors have been relocated to appropriate rehabilitation facilities. This was the way things had always been in the galaxy. The strong ruled the weak. Advanced species guided primitive ones. Order was maintained through superior technology and overwhelming force. The system had worked for 10,000 years, and there was no reason to think it would ever change. "Are there any systems requiring immediate intervention?" asked the current council speaker, a floating mass of tentacles and eyes known as a cerebral node. Zixtal consulted his data pad. 3 systems have shown signs of rapid technological advancement that might lead to problems within the next century. Standard recommendations are to increase monitoring and prepare for preemptive pacification if necessary. "And the humans?" Vexara asked, though her mental tone suggested only idle curiosity. "The humans will be reviewed again in 50 years, Zixtal replied. "Current projections suggest they will remain at negligible threat levels for at least the next 5 centuries. They are simply too primitive and too divided to ever pose a real challenge to hegemony authority." As the council meeting drew to a close, members began returning to their various ships and stations throughout the galaxy. None of them suspected that this would be one of the last peaceful council meetings they would ever attend. None of them realized that the primitive humans they had so casually dismissed were about to change everything. The galaxy had been stable for so long that the idea of a real threat seemed impossible. But sometimes the greatest dangers come from the places you least expect to find them. Dr. Sarah Chen stared at the data scrolling across her screen for the 3rd time that night. The numbers made no sense. According to her deep space monitoring array, there were objects in the outer solar system that should not exist. Objects that moved in perfect formation, maintained precise distances from each other, and occasionally adjusted their positions in ways that natural asteroids simply could not do. It was 2175, and humanity had just achieved its first successful faster-than-light test flight 6 months earlier. The small probe had jumped to Alpha Centauri and back, proving that the new quantum fold drive actually worked. The success had made headlines across Earth, but Dr. Chen's discovery would change everything humanity thought they knew about their place in the universe. "Run the analysis again," she told her computer, even though she had already done this dozens of times. The results were always the same. 17 objects positioned at the very edge of the solar system were definitely artificial. They were also definitely not human. Sarah reached for her secure communication device with trembling hands. She had to contact someone, but who? This was bigger than anything humanity had ever faced. This meant they were not alone in the universe, and whoever was out there had been watching them. 2 days later, Sarah sat in a windowless conference room deep beneath the Swiss Alps. Around the table were representatives from every major government on Earth, along with the heads of several large corporations and scientific institutions. The room hummed with nervous energy as she presented her findings. "Ladies and gentlemen," Sarah began, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was about to reveal. "We are being watched." The room erupted in voices speaking dozens of different languages. Some people looked skeptical, others frightened, and a few seemed almost excited. General Morrison of the United Earth Defense Force slammed his hand on the table to restore order. "Dr. Chen," he said carefully, "are you absolutely certain about this?" Sarah nodded. "I have run every test I can think of. I have had 3 other independent research teams verify my data. Those objects are artificial, they are not human, and they have been there for at least 50 years based on historical telescope data." Director Petrov of the European Space Consortium leaned forward. "What do we know about their capabilities?" "Very little," Sarah admitted. "They appear to be using some kind of advanced stealth technology. My equipment can only detect them, because I was looking for gravitational anomalies, not visual or electromagnetic signatures. To most of our sensors, they look exactly like asteroids." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. If these aliens had stealth technology that advanced, what else might they be capable of? And why were they hiding in the outer solar system? President Washington of the American Federal Republic spoke first. "What are our options?" "We need more information," said Dr. Rajesh Patel, head of the Global Science Initiative. "We need to know who they are, what they want, and what their capabilities are. And we need to assume the worst," added General Morrison grimly. "Species that spy on other species from hiding are probably not planning to send friendly greetings." Over. The following weeks, a secret international coalition was formed. It was called the Prometheus Protocol, named after the ancient myth of stealing fire from the gods. The goal was simple: learn everything possible about the aliens while keeping humanity's true capabilities hidden. Commander Marcus Torres was chosen to lead the operation. He was a career military officer with advanced degrees in engineering and xenobiology, 2 fields that had suddenly become much more important. Marcus had spent his whole life preparing for humanity's expansion into space, but he had never imagined that space was already occupied. "Our first priority is intelligence gathering," Marcus explained to his newly assembled team during their first meeting. "We need to capture one of their monitoring devices and figure out how it works." The mission was incredibly dangerous. Getting close to one of the alien objects without being detected would require new technology that humanity had never needed before. But the human race had always been good at solving problems when their survival was at stake. Dr. Kenji Nakamura, the brilliant physicist who had developed the quantum fold drive, was assigned to the project. Within months, he had created a new type of spacecraft that could approach the alien monitors without being detected. The ship used principles of quantum mechanics that bent space around it, making it effectively invisible. The first reconnaissance mission launched exactly 1 year after Dr. Chen's discovery. Commander Lisa Park, who would later become Admiral of Earth's secret fleet, piloted the stealth ship to the edge of the solar system. What she found there changed everything. The alien monitoring station was not just watching Earth. It was also sending regular reports back to wherever it came from. More importantly, the technology it used was incredibly advanced, but it was also old. The design patterns and construction methods suggested a civilization that had stopped innovating long ago. It's like they built these things 1,000 years ago and never bothered to update them, Lisa reported back to Earth. The technology is far beyond anything we have, but it follows predictable patterns. I think we can learn to copy it. And that was exactly what humanity did. Over the next 50 years, while the aliens thought they were observing a primitive species slowly advancing through normal technological development, humans were actually reverse engineering alien technology and preparing for war. The work had to be done in complete secrecy. Massive manufacturing facilities were built inside asteroids, hidden from any possible observation. Research stations were constructed on the far side of various moons using quantum fold technology to move materials without detection. Thousands of Earth's brightest scientists and engineers were recruited into the project, their official records showing them working on mundane civilian projects while they actually designed weapons that could fight alien starships. Dr. Nakamura made breakthrough after breakthrough, each one building on stolen alien technology. He learned to fold space-time in ways that allowed ships to appear and disappear at will. He developed new materials that could absorb and redirect energy weapons. Most importantly, he figured out how to jam and spoof the alien communication systems. They think like an empire, Kenji explained to Marcus during one of their weekly progress meetings. They have been the dominant power for so long that they have stopped thinking about real threats. Their technology is advanced, but it's also predictable. They use the same solutions to the same problems they have been solving for thousands of years. What does that mean for us? Marcus asked. It means they will not expect us to do things differently, Kenji replied with a grin. They will expect us to fight the way other primitive species fight. They will not be prepared for human creativity. The secret construction projects grew larger each year. Entire asteroid belts were hollowed out and converted into shipyards. The new human starships looked nothing like the chemical rockets the aliens expected. These were sleek predators that could fold space, bend time, and strike from impossible angles. By 2225, 50 years after first contact, humanity had built a fleet of over 3,000 advanced warships. They had developed weapons that could punch through any known alien defense. They had trained crews who knew exactly how alien technology worked and how to defeat it. Most importantly, they had learned patience. For 50 years, they had fed the alien monitoring stations exactly the information the aliens wanted to see. Fake transmissions showing primitive human technology, false data suggesting that Earth was still divided into competing nations, carefully crafted signals indicating that humanity was progressing at exactly the speed the aliens expected. The trap was ready. Now all they had to do was wait for the aliens to walk into it. Battle Commodore Vexilin stood on the bridge of his flagship, the inevitable Victory, watching the blue planet grow larger on his main display screen. Behind him, nearly 200 hegemony warships moved in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming. With the dark metal that had conquered 1,000 worlds, this was supposed to be a routine extermination mission. The humans had finally advanced enough to become a potential problem, sending desperate radio signals begging for mercy and offering to surrender their planet in exchange for their lives. It was pathetic, really. Vexilin had seen it all before, with dozens of other species. "Commodore," his communications officer reported, "we are receiving another transmission from the planet's surface." "Put it through," Vexilin ordered, settling back in his command chair. He enjoyed listening to the pleas of primitive species. It reminded him why the hegemony was necessary to maintain order in the galaxy. The voice that came through the speakers was clearly human, speaking in the broken universal translator language that most primitive species managed to learn before. Their extinction. "Great and powerful beings, we know we have offended you by developing space travel without permission. We beg for mercy. We will destroy our ships and return to our planet if you will spare our lives." Vexelin's scaled lips curled in amusement. "Standard response," he told his communications officer. "Inform them that the Hegemony Council has decided their species represents a threat to galactic stability. Their resistance is futile, and their destruction is necessary for the greater good." The human voice came back even more desperate than before. "Please, we have families, children. We never meant to threaten anyone. We just wanted to explore the stars. Surely there is some way we can coexist?" "Negative," Vexelin replied coldly. "Your species has demonstrated the aggressive expansion patterns typical of your biological type. You will be eliminated to prevent future conflicts. This transmission ends now." The Commodore cut the connection and turned to his tactical officer. "Report on planetary defenses." "Minimal, sir," the officer replied, consulting his instruments. "We detect approximately 40 primitive spacecraft in orbit around the planet. Chemical rockets with basic fusion warheads. Their largest ships appear to be cargo vessels converted for military use. No significant orbital installations or defensive platforms. Energy weapons? None detected, sir. They appear to be using projectile weapons and simple explosive devices. Our shields will not even register their attacks." Vexelin nodded with satisfaction. This would be over quickly, just like all the others. The humans had followed the standard pattern of primitive species perfectly. First, they had developed spaceflight. Then they had built a few crude warships. Finally, when faced with real military power, they had attempted to negotiate and beg for mercy. None of them ever realized that the decision to eliminate them had been made long before the first hegemony ship arrived in their system. "Weapons. Status?" Vexelin asked. "All plasma cannons charged and ready, sir. Targeting computers have locked onto major population centers and military installations. We can sterilize the planet in approximately 12 minutes. "Excellent. Begin the attack in exactly 1 hour. I want them to have time to think about their fate." What Vexelin did not know was that every word of his transmission was being recorded and analyzed in a hidden command center deep in the Kuiper Belt. Admiral Sarah Park, now in command of Earth's secret defense fleet, listened to the alien commander's words with cold anger. "Arrogant bastard," muttered Colonel Williams, her tactical officer. "He has no idea what's waiting for him." Sarah nodded grimly. "How many civilian evacuation transports have reached the safe zones?" "All of them, Admiral," Williams reported. "The last transport cleared Earth orbit 6 hours ago. Total evacuation time was 43 days. Exactly as planned." For over a month, while the alien fleet had been approaching the solar system, humanity had been quietly evacuating Earth's surface population to hidden underground cities and orbital habitats that the aliens could not detect. The cities and military bases the aliens could see were now mostly empty, filled with automated systems broadcasting false life signs and activity patterns. "What about the decoy fleet?" Sarah asked. "In position and ready, Admiral. 40 ships, broadcasting exactly the energy signatures the aliens expect to see. Fusion drives, primitive weapons, and just enough defensive capability to make the aliens think we might actually try to fight them." Sarah smiled grimly. The decoy fleet was made up of converted cargo ships and obsolete military vessels, all of them unmanned and controlled by advanced artificial intelligence. To alien sensors, they would look exactly like humanity's pathetic attempt at space defense. Meanwhile, the real human fleet remained completely hidden throughout the solar system. 3,000 advanced warships, each one incorporating 50 years of reverse-engineered alien technology refined through human innovation and creativity. They were powered down and invisible, waiting for the signal to begin humanity's first and hopefully last interstellar war. "Admiral," her communications officer reported, "we're receiving a priority transmission from Deep Space Monitoring Station 7. Put it through." The voice that came through belonged to Commander Torres, now in charge of long-range intelligence gathering. "Admiral, the alien fleet has just entered weapons range of Earth. They are beginning to charge their primary weapons systems. Confirmed, Sarah replied. All units, this is Admiral Park. Execute Operation Valkyrie on my command. Throughout the solar system, thousands of human officers and crew members waited at their battle stations. On Mars, hidden shipyards prepared to launch support vessels. In the asteroid belt, massive railguns powered up their targeting systems. Near Jupiter, a squadron of heavy cruisers began charging their quantum fold drives. And on Earth itself, now mostly empty, but still broadcasting signs of a terrified population, automated defense systems prepared to spring the largest military trap in human history. The alien fleet moved into attack formation, confident and contemptuous. Battle Commodore. Vexilin watched his tactical display with satisfaction as his ships positioned themselves for maximum destruction. The human planet was helpless before them, just as every other primitive world had been helpless. Sir, his sensor officer reported, the human vessels are attempting to form a defensive line between us and their planet. Vexilin laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the bridge. 40 ships against 200? They must be even more primitive than we thought. Target their largest vessels first. I want them to watch their pathetic fleet die before we destroy their world. The alien ships moved forward, their weapons charging with deadly energy. Plasma cannons that could melt continents began to glow with contained stellar fire. Missile systems that had shattered asteroids prepared to launch their payloads. Energy shields that had never been penetrated by primitive weapons hummed with power. In the hidden command center, Admiral Park watched the aliens walk directly into her trap. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. The enemy fleet was perfectly positioned, their weapons focused on targets that did not matter, their attention completely focused on the wrong threat. Sarah looked around at her command staff, seeing determination and controlled fear in their faces. In a few minutes, they would either save humanity or die trying. There would be no second chance. She took a deep breath and spoke the words that would change galactic history forever. All ships, all stations, all units, she said calmly into her communicator. Decloak. The word decloak had barely left Admiral Park's lips when the solar system transformed into something that would have been impossible just moments before. Battle Commodore Vexilin was staring at his tactical display, watching his weapons officers. Prepare to fire on the pathetic human defense fleet when every alarm on his bridge began screaming at once. The display that had shown empty space around his fleet suddenly blazed with thousands of new contacts. What is happening? Vexilin roared, his scaled hands gripping the arms of his command chair. His sensor officer's voice cracked with disbelief. Sir, we are detecting massive energy signatures throughout the system. Ships, sir, thousands of ships. They are appearing everywhere. The main display screen shifted to show the tactical situation, and Vexilin felt his blood turn cold. His fleet of 200 vessels, which had seemed so powerful just seconds ago, was now surrounded on all sides by human warships that had appeared from nowhere. The neat formation he had maintained was now trapped in the center of a three-dimensional cage of enemy vessels. But these were not the primitive chemical rockets his intelligence reports had described. The ships materializing around him were sleek predators that seemed to bend light around their hulls. They moved in ways that defied physics, appearing and disappearing like ghosts. Some were as large as his flagship, others small and fast, like hunting wolves, but all of them radiated technological sophistication that should not have been possible. How many? Vexilin asked, though he was not sure he wanted to know the answer. Sensors are having difficulty maintaining accurate counts, sir, his tactical officer reported. The enemy vessels are using some kind of stealth technology that interferes with our scanners. Current estimate is over 3,000 ships. 3,000. Vexilin's fleet was outnumbered 15-1 by an enemy that was supposed to be centuries behind hegemony technology. It was impossible. It was insane. It was a nightmare. Emergency transmission to Hegemony Command, Vexilin ordered. Priority Alpha. Request immediate reinforcement. We have encountered an unknown enemy with advanced capabilities. His communications. Officer tried several times before looking up with confusion. Sir, all communication channels are being jammed. I cannot reach hegemony space. On the hidden human command ship, Admiral Park watched the alien fleet's panicked attempts to call for help with cold satisfaction. The jamming technology Dr. Nakamura had developed was working perfectly, cutting off all alien communication while leaving human ships in perfect contact with each other. Admiral, her tactical officer reported, all ships are in position. We have complete tactical superiority, awaiting your orders. Sarah looked at the display showing the trapped alien fleet. These were the same ships that had come to exterminate her species without a second thought, the same beings who had casually discussed wiping out human civilization as if they were deciding what to have for lunch. Open a channel to the alien flagship, she ordered. Moments later, Battle Commodore Vexilin found himself staring at a human face on his main screen. The being looked remarkably similar to the primitive creatures his species had catalogued, but there was something in the eyes that made him deeply uncomfortable. This was not the face of a primitive begging for mercy. This was the face of a predator. I am Admiral Sarah Park of the Earth Defense Fleet, the human said in perfect hegemony standard language. You came here to destroy my species. You will not be leaving. Vexilin tried to maintain his dignity and authority. I am Battle Commodore Vexilin of the Galactic Hegemony. You will surrender immediately and prepare to be boarded. Your resistance is futile. The human's expression did not change. You have been monitoring our system for 50 years, believing yourselves hidden. You have underestimated us while we learned everything about you. Your weapons, your tactics, your weaknesses. You came here to demonstrate your superiority and instead revealed your own inadequacy. Impossible, Vexilin snarled. Our stealth technology is beyond your comprehension. Our weapons are more advanced than anything your primitive species could develop. Admiral Park's smile was cold and sharp. Let me show you how wrong you are. All ships, begin the demonstration. The human fleet opened fire, and Vexilin watched his worldview crumble in real time. The energy beams that lanced out from the human ships were not the primitive projectiles he had expected. They were coherent streams of folded space-time that passed through his shields as if they did not exist. Where they struck his ships, armor that had deflected the weapons of a dozen species simply vanished, atoms scattered to quantum foam. Evasive maneuvers! Vexilin screamed, but it was already too late. His ships tried to scatter, but the humans had anticipated every possible escape route. No matter which direction his vessels turned, they found more human ships waiting for them. The alien weapons fired back, massive plasma bolts that should have vaporized any target they hit. But the human ships seemed to dance between the attacks, moving in impossible patterns that defied everything Vexilin knew about space combat. Some of the energy beams actually struck human vessels, only to be absorbed and redirected back at their sources. Our weapons are having no effect, sir, his tactical officer reported in panic. Their hulls are made of some kind of adaptive material that learns to counter our attacks. Vexilin watched in horror as ship after ship of his proud fleet was systematically dismantled. The humans were not even trying to destroy them quickly. Instead, they were demonstrating their superiority by disabling weapons, destroying engines, and leaving the alien crews alive to witness their complete defeat. Sir, his sensor officer called out. Human boarding craft are approaching. They are phasing directly through our shields. Through the deck plating, Vexilin could hear the sounds of combat as human soldiers materialized inside his ship. But even that was wrong. The sounds were too brief, too one-sided. His elite Krex warriors, trained from birth for combat, were being defeated in seconds by enemies who could appear and disappear at will. The bridge doors exploded inward, and human soldiers in advanced combat armor stepped through the smoke. Their weapons were unlike anything in hegemony databases, and their movements suggested enhancement technologies that should not have existed. Battle Commodore Vexilin, the lead human said through his suit's speakers, "You are now a prisoner of the Earth Defense Fleet. Your ship and crew are under our protection." Vexilin looked around his bridge at his defeated crew and then back at the tactical display. In less than 20 minutes, his entire fleet had been captured or destroyed. Not one human ship had been lost. It was the most one-sided military defeat in recorded galactic history. "How?" he asked quietly. "How is this possible?" The human soldier removed his helmet, revealing a face that was young but marked by determination and intelligence. "You made the same mistake empires always make, Commodore. You assumed that because you had been strong for a long time, you would always be strong. You stopped innovating, stopped adapting, stopped learning." The soldier gestured toward the tactical display, where human ships were now securing the remnants of the alien fleet. "We spent 50 years studying your technology, improving it, and preparing for this moment. While you thought you were watching primitive mammals, we were becoming something you never expected to face." "What happens now?" Vexilin asked. The human's smile was not cruel, but it was absolutely certain. "Now the galaxy learns that humanity is no longer hiding. The age of the hegemony is over, Commodore. Welcome to the age of humanity." News of the disaster spread through hegemony space like a virus, jumping from system to system faster than anyone thought possible. Within hours of the battle's end, every major species in the galaxy knew that an entire hegemony battle fleet had been destroyed by the humans, a species that was supposed to be centuries away from posing any real threat. The reaction was immediate and chaotic. Some species demanded an explanation from the Council. Others began preparing their own defenses, suddenly worried about what other primitive species might be hiding advanced capabilities. A few quietly began sending diplomatic messages toward Earth, hoping to establish contact before humanity decided they were also enemies. But the real transformation began when Admiral Sarah Park's message reached every corner of hegemony space. She had waited exactly 6 hours after the battle's end before broadcasting on all hegemony communication frequencies simultaneously. The transmission was impossible to block or ignore, reaching every ship, every station, and every inhabited world in the galaxy at the same time. Admiral Park appeared on screens across thousands of worlds, her image clear and steady despite broadcasting across interstellar distances. Behind her, the captured hegemony flagship served as a powerful reminder of what had just happened. "Citizens of the galaxy," she began, her voice calm and confident. "I am Admiral Sarah Park of the Earth Defense Fleet. 6 hours ago, a hegemony battle fleet entered our system with the intention of exterminating my species. That fleet no longer exists. In the Great Council chamber, the emergency session was in chaos. Counselor Vex Ara of the Zephyrians was attempting to establish telepathic contact with other members of her species, trying to determine if this was some kind of elaborate hoax. Admiral Zixtal of the Krex was shouting demands for immediate military retaliation, while others called for investigation and caution. "This is impossible," Zixtal was saying for the 100th time. Battle Commodore Vexilin commanded 200 of our finest ships. These primitive mammals cannot have defeated him. High Coordinator Thexmol of the Vorthak Collective pulsed. Angry red patterns. "The evidence is undeniable. Our communication networks confirm the transmission's authenticity. The humans have demonstrated capabilities that our intelligence networks completely failed to detect." On screens throughout the chamber, Admiral Park continued her broadcast. "For 50 years, you have monitored our system while believing yourselves hidden. During that time, we discovered your observation posts, studied your technology, and prepared for the conflict you would inevitably bring to our world." The Admiral gestured, and the display behind her changed to show technical specifications and detailed analysis of hegemony military technology. Weapon systems, shield frequencies, engine designs, communication protocols, information that should have been absolutely secret was being broadcast to the entire galaxy. Your stealth technology is based on quantum field manipulation principles that we mastered 30 years ago, Park explained. Your weapons use plasma containment systems that have critical vulnerabilities at specific frequency ranges. Your ships follow tactical doctrines that have not changed in centuries, making your responses predictable. In the council chamber, several members were looking physically ill. If the humans had this level of understanding of hegemony technology, what else might they know? What other secrets had been compromised? Furthermore, Park continued, your monitoring stations were not as undetectable as you believed. We have been feeding you false information for 5 decades, carefully crafting the image of a primitive divided species while our real development proceeded in secret. Counselor Mordak of the Silicate Assembly spoke in a voice like grinding stone. If they could deceive us so completely, what other species might be doing the same? How many of our primitive subjects are actually more advanced than we realize? It was a terrifying thought that was occurring to beings across the galaxy. The hegemony's power had always been based on technological superiority and perfect information. If that information was wrong, if species could hide their true capabilities, then everything about the galactic order was suspect. Admiral Park's image shifted to show the solar system as it truly was, revealing the massive industrial installations hidden in asteroid belts, the shipyards concealed behind moons, and the defensive networks that had remained completely invisible to hegemony sensors. We did not seek this conflict, Park stated, firmly. We would have been content to develop peacefully and eventually make contact on equal terms. But you chose to see us as a threat to be eliminated rather than a species to be welcomed. You came to our home with the intention of committing genocide. The Admiral's expression hardened. That was a mistake you will not have the opportunity to repeat. The display changed again, this time showing real-time images of human fleets throughout the galaxy. Ships that had somehow traveled impossible distances were now positioned near major hegemony installations, all of them previously undetected, and all of them clearly capable of striking without warning. Our ships are now present in every sector of hegemony space, Park announced. We have been observing your military installations, your trade routes, and your command centers for the past 10 years. We know where you are vulnerable, and we are prepared to act if necessary. In the council chamber, panic was setting in. Emergency communications from across the galaxy confirmed that human ships had indeed appeared near critical installations. Fleets that should have required months to travel between systems had somehow positioned themselves throughout hegemony territory without anyone noticing. How did they move so many ships without us detecting them? Vexara asked, her mental voice tight with fear. The same way they hid their development for 50 years, Thexmol replied, his color patterns shifting to deep purple with worry. We have been blind, and they have been planning. Admiral Park's broadcast was nearing its conclusion, but her final words would be remembered across the galaxy for generations. The choice before you is simple, she said. You can accept that the galaxy has changed and work toward a future based on cooperation and mutual respect. Or you can continue to believe that might makes right and superior technology gives you the right to eliminate anyone you consider a threat. The Admiral paused, letting the implications sink in across thousands of worlds. If you choose the second path, you will discover that you are no longer the most technologically advanced species in the galaxy. We have learned everything you know, improved upon it, and developed capabilities you cannot imagine. We have studied your history, your tactics, and your weaknesses for half a century. Park's final words were delivered with absolute certainty. We are no longer hiding, we are no longer afraid, and we are no longer your subjects. The galaxy belongs to all of us now, not just to those who were strong enough to take it first. The transmission ended, leaving the galaxy in stunned silence. 6 months later, the galactic hegemony no longer existed. Some species had tried to maintain the old order through force, only to discover that human technology was even more advanced than the initial demonstrations had suggested. Others had quickly sought alliance with Earth, hoping to benefit from human innovation and protection. But most had simply withdrawn from galactic politics entirely, uncertain about their place in a universe where the rules had changed so completely. The humans, for their part, had proven surprisingly generous in victory. They offered technological assistance to species that approached them peacefully, shared their discoveries with anyone willing to cooperate, and established new trade networks based on mutual benefit rather than domination. The galaxy was no longer ruled by ancient empires that had grown complacent with their power. Instead, it had become a place where innovation, adaptation, and the willingness to challenge the status quo could triumph over even the most advanced technology. The age of empires was over. The age of humanity had begun, and with it, a new era of possibility that none of the old powers had ever imagined. In quiet moments, some of the former hegemony leaders wondered if this had always been inevitable. Perhaps every galactic civilization eventually grew stagnant and was replaced by hungrier, more creative species. Perhaps the humans were just the latest in a long line of upstarts who had challenged and defeated their predecessors. But none of that mattered now. The galaxy had been transformed forever, and there was no going back to the way things were before Earth's fleet decloaked and changed everything.